Hello, everyone, and welcome inside Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. And I have one question for you today. Do you believe in moral victories? That is what the Broncos got yesterday out at Mile High. B. Marsh, it turned into a heck of a game. It looked like it was going to be an absolute blowout. And then all of a sudden, the Broncos make a comeback. They don't get the win. They end up falling 34-28, fall to 3-10 on the season. Let's jump into today's show with What's on Marshall's Mind. What's on Marshall's Mind brought to you by Breckenridge Distillery, the official bourbon of the Denver Broncos. Shop Colorado retailers for their limited edition Broncos bourbon blends. B. Marsh, what you got today?
Hey, man, just like you said, it was an exciting game. Initially, it was 27-0. If we was playing Madden, the Broncos would have got off the stick, so we wouldn't even see a comeback. But all I know is, man, I was excited to see some explosive plays, Jerry Jeudy coming and showing why he was a first-round pick. The resiliency, the fight that the team had. They picked off Patrick Mahomes 3 times. So it was an exciting game. I'm excited this morning to talk to you, Mike, because we finally got a different game to talk about. Well, it's not the same game that we've been talking about for the last 10 weeks, right? So thank God, or maybe even longer than that, right? The whole season. So I'm excited.
So, B. Marsh, do you believe in moral victories? Is that what you're taking this as?
No, I don't believe in moral victory. I'm not a moral victory guy. But, see, here we go. Does that negate everything I said before?
Here we go, yeah.
Does that negate everything? All I know, it helps the morale, though. So I guess that is called a moral victory. And you know what? I think there can be moral victories. I'm not really a moral victory guy in sports because I'm like more black and white. There's no gray area for me.
At the end of the day, it's still a loss.
It's still a loss, but I see what it can do to the psyche of a team, the confidence of players, the confidence of coaches. So I can see that. So I guess we can call it a little bit of a.
Well, and I do think there's something to that, Brandon, because as you mentioned, if this were on PlayStation, you're down 27-0 after you throw a pick six, you're throwing the controller and you're walking away, right? And the players could have done that. They could have quit. They could have given up. And I think there's something to be said for the fact that they didn't. Now, there are people who are going to be pointing to, okay, well, maybe this is a reason why they should bring back Nathaniel Hackett, and I'm not going that far. But I do think that if he had lost the team, they would have given up yesterday, right? You would have seen it become a bigger blowout rather than come back and score 2 touchdowns before halftime, and now all of a sudden you feel like you're in a ball game and you got some momentum going. I do think that is worthy of noting. Again, I don't think it's worth bringing Nathaniel Hackett back. But inside that locker room, there are opportunities to quit in games, and the Broncos didn't do that yesterday, and I think that's noteworthy.
Yeah, they didn't do it at all. Look, coming into the game with the big mighty Chiefs, and then they throw the first punch, right, and they continue to punch you and continue to punch you. You keep getting knocked down, and you finally get up, right? I like that. I mean, that shows some. They got some confidence. They got a little bit of resiliency, a little dog in them, that's what I kind of saw for them to mount that type of comeback against that type of team. So it lets you know the talent is there, right? Yeah. The talent is there, man. They have certain pieces. They just, and I'm gonna stick to this. They need a new coach, man. They need a new head coach. I think with a new head coach, it'll get them over the hump. They'll finally be able to beat the Chiefs. I don't see it happening this year. I don't see it on the Arrowhead and getting it done, but maybe next year, you know what I'm saying? Maybe next year, because the way it looked yesterday, I'm like, okay, look, they can finally get with those boys.
It's funny that you mentioned that because that was our poll question last night on All Access was when will the losing streak finally end? Now 14 straight games that the Broncos organization has lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. You've got that picture up over your shoulder there. The last time that the Broncos won a game, September of 2015, which is crazy when you think about it, that they won a game over the Chiefs. So Brandon, will it be next year? Because I thought at the beginning of this year, I thought this was the game that they were going to win to finally end the streak. And obviously things didn't go the way that we thought they were going to go really for the course of this entire season. But the majority of people who voted on our poll last night said it will be 2024 or beyond until the Broncos end up beating the Chiefs. I think it could happen next year at home, depending upon how this offense looks.
Yeah, I think it happen next year as well. I think there's too many injuries. This year, a lot of key guys are out. The offense is just it still doesn't look great, even though Russell looked really good yesterday. I thought he did pretty well, man. The offense looked way better yesterday. I had a couple explosive plays, but it's just a lot of injuries. I don't know if I see them coming in to Arrowhead and in a couple of weeks and getting it done. But I think it could be 2023.
And we're going to talk about this in our next segment. I'm not sure that Russell Wilson should play in that game at Arrowhead here in just a couple weeks. It's 3 weeks away, but we're going to talk about that and what the Broncos should do with their quarterback. Brandon, what did you see yesterday out of this offense? Because 4 touchdowns, a season high 28 points. Complimentary football was the first thing, right? They took advantage of the opportunities that their defense gave them. But what changed? Because this offense looked different, and for the first time all season, it looked like the offense we thought it was going to look like. I mean, you look at Russell Wilson's numbers before he got knocked out. 23 of 36, 247 yards. He got sacked 6 times. Also had the big 66-yard touchdown on the screen. I was sitting there like, where has this been all season long?
Well, first of all, you said they had a season high 28 points, which is crazy.
How sad is that?
How
sad is that?
That's the season high. Okay, in today's game, which is it's more biased towards offense, which is crazy. But I think, man, I think it just looked different yesterday. I think they executed well. I mean, obviously, Russ got put on the ground 6 times, but they executed well. The play calling was on par. It was on point. You know what I'm saying? It was on par. I mean, look, Marlon Mack came in and had a long touchdown run because that guy's explosive. Mm-hmm. I don't know why he's been a journeyman in the league. I've been trying to figure out because when he was with Indianapolis, he was a baller. He can play. I mean, I just think it was just in sync. It was more in sync yesterday than it was all season. I'm wondering if they read the news clippings. You know what I'm saying? So, like, they have no chance. Offense is this, da-da-da. They'll get blown out. I wonder if they saw the news clippings and they took that to heart. But even after the slow start, right, like you said, they could have tanked. They could have said, well, here we go again. But they didn't, man. That showed some character that I haven't seen from this team all year. Now, the defense, I feel like they got character, right? The defense got some character. They're very resilient. They're going to play 4 quarters of football. But the offense, they a lack of character. But I to be honest with you, yesterday looked like the offense and the team that we thought that we was going to get at the beginning of 2022.
Well, and all the things that we have heard from Nathaniel Hackett and Russell Wilson that we keep just like rolling our eyes at because it's the same thing every week, but you got to convert on 3rd down. You got to convert inside the red zone. They finally did those things yesterday. I mean, 6 3rd down conversions. That was tied for 2nd most all season. They were 3 for 3 inside the red zone. They finally scored touchdowns inside the red zone. And so all of these things, it was like, oh, okay, yes, they were kind of getting old and cliche, but it's true. You do those things and you end up giving yourself a chance to win the football game. If they don't dig themselves a 27-0 hole, then I think they win that game. You know what I mean? I mean, the defense only allowed Kansas City to score 27 points, and then the offense scored 28. So you take away the pick 6, and all of a sudden the Broncos are on top on the scoreboard. Now, I just think that I also wonder, too, like how much of this is Clint Kubiak finally getting a feel for calling the game with this offense and having to deal with, kind of what he's been dealing with. This is, 3 or 4 games now that he's finally been calling the plays. And I think you're starting to see the impact that he has had and maybe what could have been. It's unfortunate that it's just too late as the Broncos have now been eliminated from the playoffs. And Brandon, I think this brings up a really interesting point. What do you see from the Broncos for the next 4 games, right? You saw the fight yesterday, and you saw it result in a loss. Now, do you see that same fight against Arizona this week and against LA on Christmas, knowing that this team literally has nothing to play for now other than individual players playing for their contracts and playing for an opportunity maybe somewhere else in the league, depending upon what happens in the offseason?
Well, that's what we're going to find out. At the end of the day, man, look, these guys have to feed their family, so there can't be a drop-off. To be honest, I can only see potentially maybe a drop-off with the guys that have already secured the bag. Yeah. The guys that have already, their financial status, their financial standing is really good, and they know they're going to be on the team. You know, a guy like Josie Jewell, who I thought he played well yesterday. He had 2 interceptions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's playing for a new deal. You know, it's a lot of guys that are playing for deals and playing for longevity in this league. So they can't afford to take a snap off. And that's the mindset. You can't afford to take a snap off. So whether we're 10-3 or 3-10, we got to go out there and play hard because the NFL stands for not for long, right? So I can't put bad film on tape. It just cannot happen. It cannot happen. I'm doing myself a disservice. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care what vacation I'm going to take in a couple of weeks. No, I need to focus on what's going on right here and right now.
I'm going to steal this line from my guy Zach By on Twitter. Josie Jewell's been playing out of position all these years. He should be a wide receiver. Little did we know until yesterday. I mean, he had no interceptions coming into yesterday's game. Ends up with 2 of them. Unfortunately, it was in a losing effort as the Broncos pick off Patrick Mahomes 3 times, but still get outscored on the scoreboard by the Chiefs as they fall 34-28. When we come back, one guy who has secured the bag is quarterback Russell Wilson. What should the Broncos do with him after a scary injury yesterday? Should they shut him down for the rest of the season? That plus our report card, some high grades, and one really low grade. Coming up next, right here on Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. Welcome back inside Upon Further Review of B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy as we continue to wrap up yesterday's 14th straight loss to the Kansas City Chiefs as the Broncos fall to 3-10 on the season. Brandon, obviously the Broncos lose the game and then they lose their quarterback, Russell Wilson, out now in concussion protocol. A really scary scene, especially with some of the camera shots that we saw when Russell hit the ground, courtesy of that great CBS Sports crew that was covering the game yesterday. Brandon, I am of the mindset that the Broncos should shut Russell Wilson down for the rest of the season. You want me to give you my argument now, or you want me to wait and have you respond to that? It's up to you.
I'm listening. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So here's the deal. One, you gain nothing by playing him for the rest of the year. All right, you got 4 games left. You got the Cardinals, you got the Rams, you got the Chiefs, and you got the Chargers. You're eliminated from playoff contention. You don't have a first-round pick. You literally have nothing to play for in this scenario. You are invested in Russell Wilson through his contract through the 2028 season. Now, there are some opportunities for the Broncos to get out of that, but you have invested big-time money and big-time assets in this guy. You need him to be the guy you thought he was going to be next season and beyond. And I think the best opportunity for him to be that is by shutting him down. I don't think Russell's going to want to do that. I don't think Nathaniel Hackett is going to want to do that. But I think that George Paton and Greg Pinner need to come together and say this is what is in the best interest of the franchise, even if it means putting him on IR and just shutting him down for the rest of the year. This offensive line, as they proved yesterday, is not up to the task of protecting him. You cannot have Russell Wilson getting hit 6 times in a game. You cannot have that moving forward. You don't need to risk further injury. Shut Russell Wilson down right now and start eyeing the 2023 season.
Hey, I understand all of that. You know what I'm saying? I think that he should continue to play. I think that he should. I truly think, well, first of all, so let me say, as you so eloquently put, that argument was amazing. All right, you're right. That he's tied to until the 2028 season. I mean, you don't want to risk further injury because this is your franchise quarterback, whether you like it or not. Right? Our offensive line is makeshift. It's not as good as we would hope, or it's not a championship offensive line at all. So that puts him in more risk. But I think he needs to continue to play. I think he needs to show improve. Right? I think he needs to continue to build chemistry with these wide receivers because it looks like he hasn't had chemistry all season long with these guys. I think he needs to captivate and capture that locker room because I think part of me is thinking, and so we hear that, people may not really feel him as much as they thought, right? So I think the only way he can do that is by playing well and winning, right? So I think he should continue to play. Now, I get the risk in that, right? Risk versus reward. The reward might be slightly less, but if he captures that locker room and he really grabs, this chemistry with these wide receivers and the offense starts to trend in the right direction, I think it could be good for 2023. Nathaniel Hackett and Clint will not want him to shut down because they want to keep their jobs,
Of
right? So
course,
it's going to be
yeah,
tough to keep their job with Brett Ripien. But they got to understand that job is probably gone anyway. You know what I'm saying? But I'm a guy that's going to fight to the end, right? You know what I'm saying? I'm going to fight to the last whistle to the fat lady sings is what they say. But I think they should continue to play him. And I think they will continue to play him as soon as there's concussion protocol.
I think they will continue to play him. I don't know that it's the right move for Russell or that it's the right move for this franchise. Because, Brandon, here's the other part. Yes, he could come in and play well. What if he comes in and stinks again? You know what I mean? And then you go into the offseason and you think Russell Wilson didn't get any better throughout the course of the year. He had one good game against the Chiefs and got knocked out and then came back and didn't play well. I think you could potentially find yourself in an even bigger hole if he comes back and plays.
True. Well, I'm thinking whether he plays well or not, I mean, at the end of the day, I think you got more to gain for him playing and potentially playing well. Because if he doesn't play well at all, I mean, we're just where we were before the Chiefs game. I think it's going to be the same spot. At the end of the day, I think they will play him. I don't think they're going to let him off the hook. They're not going to let him off the hook like that. They're like, no, we need all of our, we need
they're
all
play
this money
him
we
as
gave you. You will play.
Bro, you've been so bad all year. Get back out there.
Absolutely. That's exactly what they're going to do, man. So we have a first-round pick from the Dolphins, correct?
They do. So the Broncos fans need to root for the Dolphins to do poorly for the rest of the year and be thankful that the Chargers beat them last night on Sunday Night Football.
100%. Okay. Well, that's all we got to look forward to. Stuff that's not, in our control. But, if last night is any – go ahead.
Yeah. It's such a weird scenario because the Broncos are rooting against the Dolphins. The Seahawks are rooting against the Broncos. You know what I mean? Because the Seahawks have their pick. And so, the Broncos need to root for the Dolphins to go in the tank here and hopefully have more stinkers like they had last night on Sunday Night Football in L.A. All right, let's jump into this week's report card. This week's report card brought to you by the Colorado Lottery. Play CBS Sport Pick the Score for your chance to win $1,000 in scratch tickets. Enter at cbscolorado.com/contest. Professor Marshall, who are you handing out a grade to today?
Man, I'm gonna give a grade to this individual, and his performance was pretty good, but I think the sentimental value of it elevated his grade from a B to an A. It's Jerry Jeudy. He had 3 touchdowns yesterday. First Broncos receiver to have 3 touchdowns since Demaryius Thomas. And they tributed, or they gave a tribute to Demaryius Thomas at the game yesterday. So I think that in itself deserves an A. You know what I'm saying? That deserves an A. Jeudy kind of showed flashes of why he was a first-round pick. It hasn't materialized in his Bronco career yet. So, and he needs to do something and do something fast because, if they have a decision to pick up his 5th-year option, I don't see how they do that. And I'm not sure if that's this year or next year. But whenever that comes up, I don't see how they do that. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, to Jerry Jeudy and Russell Wilson, that connection was nice yesterday. He gets an A.
Even got one from Brett Ripien as well late in the game. The 5th-year option does come up this offseason. I think the Broncos will end up picking it up because I don't know what other options they have there. And I think that they are holding out hope that Jerry Jeudy is going to be the guy that John Elway thought he was when he drafted him. I think we're seeing glimpses of that, right? And we saw it yesterday, and now the question is, 1, where has that been? And 2, can we see more of that? And I think a lot of what Jerry Jeudy has struggled with is the quarterback play, and we thought it was going to be better this year with Russell, and obviously that hasn't been the case. But I think you're right, Brandon. It was great to see that. Now the question is, can we get more of it moving forward? And can we see more of that moving forward?
So I'm curious, Mike. Do you pick it up so you don't have a Josh Jacobs type situation? Because Josh Jacobs has been – they didn't pay up his 5th-year option. He's killing it, right? They're going to have to pay that man. You know what I'm saying? So do you kind of pick it up just in case and then push it further down the line? Or do you just not pick it up and then if he does play well, franchise tag him? I mean, I know there's different ways to go about it.
Well, I think, I think you pick it up and in large part because of where you are contractually with other players, right? You gave Tim Patrick a big deal. He's maybe going to be ready to go for the start of next year, but obviously, it's going to take some time. Courtland Sutton, I hate to say this, but Courtland's dealing with some injuries right now, right? And so you worry about that moving forward. And then outside of those two guys, you don't really have anybody in that receiving room that you trust who can be a big game receiver like Jerry Jeudy. And so I think you pick it up, you pay Jeudy the 5th year, and then you see what happens. And then you draft a guy going into probably not this year, but next year's draft, who can maybe replace Jeudy when it's all said and done if you don't sign him after that 5th year extension. But I think you give him the 5th year extension because you kind of have your hands tied behind your back a little bit.
Yeah. They don't have anybody, like you said, unless they try to get a free agent. But they got to go. They got to go with Jeudy.
But I don't think you have the money to sign a big-time free agent.
No.
And so that's part of what George Payton has done.
$250 million. Sheesh.
Yeah, right.
They got to keep him now. Hey, I just realized that.
I'm going to hand out a grade to Russell Wilson. I'm going to give him a B. I thought we touched on it earlier. I thought he actually had a really good game yesterday prior to getting knocked out. I thought the way that he was able to orchestrate that offense, take advantage of the turnovers that his defense got him, turn those into points, score inside the red zone, his connection with Jerry Jeudy. We have harped on Russell Wilson time and time again on this show, and rightfully so. He's deserved a lot of criticism, but I think when he has a game like that, you got to give him some praise too. If they had won, I'd give him an A, but I'm going to give him a B for his effort yesterday.
No, I think that's a good grade, and I think he deserves that. He showed, why he was a premier quarterback. And, outside the pick six, that happens, I guess. But, other than that, he looked really well. I'm pretty sure that gave Broncos fans some hope. And that gave them a glimpse of what could be, maybe, possibly, potentially. So hopefully, right? So first of all those rivals. But look, I think that's a good grade. And hopefully we see more of this because, he has that type of talent. He is that type of quarterback. So it's just, we've been thirsting for it all season. We just haven't got it.
Yes. Some hope. Finally, Broncos country got some of that. Speaking of Russell Wilson and that offense, I'm going to give the offensive line an F. They were terrible yesterday. 6 sacks. You can't have that. You have to be better. Luke Wattenberg, you almost feel bad because he's a guy who shouldn't be out there. They're playing a lot of backups. You feel bad for Russell. You feel bad for those guys. They're in an unwinnable situation. There's a reason that they were backups to start the year and that some of them weren't even on the roster. This offensive line was awful yesterday, though. They're getting an F from me. They have to get better. They have to get better to protect whoever is back there for the course of the season, or you worry about the health of the quarterback moving forward in these final 4 games. But that offensive line's getting an F from me.
Yeah, look, I know these next few teams are licking their chops. Whoever's the pass rushers, and they got incentives. They got incentives to meet, or they're trying to get paid the next day or the next year. Whatever, they looking at their chops knowing, okay, we're playing the Broncos. I'm sure I can get a sack or at least 2 sacks against this team. So the O-line, they better do something. They better step up.
Somebody's going to have a Khalil Mack type game.
Right.
All right, when we come back, it is time to zoom around the league. We'll tell you what stood out to us around the NFL yesterday, and we will break down last week's fantasy game and get you set for Monday night and Thursday night football with our Underdog Fantasy Contest. That and more right here on Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Travel consideration is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing app in the industry. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. Welcome back inside Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. It is time for us to zoom around the league, brought to you by Zoom Care. Visit ZoomCare.com to learn more about their Beyond Better urgent and primary healthcare clinics in Denver and in Boulder. B. Marsh, what stood out to you around the NFL yesterday?
Hey, man, let's talk about these Detroit Lions, okay? They are here, and they look like they could potentially sneak into the playoffs, potentially, if some things fall right for them, if they continue on winning. They handed it to the Minnesota Vikings yesterday, who are one of the top teams in the NFL. Jared Goff looks like he's playing like he did, back in his Rams days. The defense is on point. The offense looks good. It's creative. They threw a pass to Penei Sewell yesterday. to get a first down, man. I'm liking what I'm seeing from Detroit, man. It's kind of exciting. It's crazy to say
And
that.
you were on Detroit a while back too. I mean, you were on them last week, and we've kind of mentioned them throughout. I love what we're doing, what they're doing in Detroit. I think it's a lot of fun, and it's fun to watch. I was on the Vikings to win the division. They had a chance to wrap it up yesterday. Didn't get it because of the Lions, but that was fun to watch the Lions. I'm going to go with Brock Purdy in San Francisco. How about Mr. Irrelevant coming in and beating the GOAT in his first start? You got Dad in the stands crying. I loved everything about that, except for the fact that I was on Tampa plus 3.5. But Brock Purdy comes in and goes 16 of 21, 185 yards, 2 touchdowns. Shout out to Mr. Irrelevant getting it done. Brandon, did you see the moment after the game where one of the 49ers defenders went up and had Tom Brady sign the ball that he intercepted from Brady?
Yeah,
that was a gutsy move.
That was a gutsy move. Gutsy, but Brady's the GOAT, man. I think he took it as, it's like Buddy showed him reverence, right? He showed him reverence. He knows that he's one of the greatest ever.
Yeah.
He knows this is probably his only time he'll pick off Brady, his only time he'll be able to get him to sign it. So I don't think Brady took it any that way. I'm pretty sure it was a humbling moment for Brady, knowing that, okay, this guy respects me that much as a player. So, I know, it could have went the other way, but he just was shown a lot of reverence, man, because Tom Brady is the GOAT.
Well, and cool. Good on Tom for handling that the way that he did. All right, let's jump into our Underdog Fantasy Games of the Week. Underdog Fantasy, it's the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. Last week, we had a doubleheader Monday night and Thursday night. Brandon, shout out to Josh Jacobs, got the job done for you. He was really the only guy who did anything for either one of our teams. It was enough to get you a victory. And as our producer extraordinaire, Kevin Harper, has informed me, if I lose this week, he's going to replace me with Romy Bean, because Romy had quite the run of success against you. So I'm on the hot seat. They're not even going to wait until Black Monday, is what Kevin told me. So we're doing another double dip this week. We've got New England at Arizona on Monday night, San Francisco at Seattle on Thursday night. I've got the first pick in the draft because I'm a loser. I'm going to go with Christian McCaffrey, number 1 overall, no doubt about that. Hopefully bolstering Team Spencer in the standings here. Christian McCaffrey, number 1 overall pick for this week. Who do you got?
And that was great. I think he got 28 points. I was playing against him in 2 different leagues, and he gave me a headache. So hopefully he doesn't do the same. But I'm going with Ramondre Stevenson and DeAndre Hopkins. Got to go with D-Hop.
Yeah, I like those 2 picks. Those were absolutely going to be my next picks if you didn't take them off the board. I'm going to go with DK Metcalf. I know it's a short week. I know he was questionable heading into last week's game, but had a good game against the Carolina Panthers. I like DK again, and then I'm going to go with James Conner with my 3rd pick. So I've got Christian McCaffrey, DK Metcalf, and James Conner. We go back to you, Ramondre Stevenson, DeAndre Hopkins. Who do you like for 3 and 4?
3 and 4, man. I got Tyler Lockett for 3. And our arrangement, man, for 4, man. On with, I got to go with. I'm not sure if Deebo Samuel will play. He got carted off yesterday, so hopefully he will play. But I'm gonna go with Brandon Ayuk just in case.
I don't know why I'm doing you that favor, but I'm going to do you that favor just because I'm a good guy and because I like you, B-Marsh. So there you go. Tyler Lockett, Deebo, or Ayuk for you. And then I'm going to go George Kittle, the star tight end out of San Francisco, to round it out. So Christian McCaffrey, DK Metcalf, James Conner, and George Kittle for Team Spencer. Team B-Marsh, Ramondre Stevenson, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Lockett, and then Deebo/Ayuk, depending upon what happens with Deebo Samuels and his availability for Thursday night. All right, that is going to do it for this week's edition of Upon Further Review with B-Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy for all of us here at CBS 4. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today on CBS News Colorado or wherever you get your podcast. We will be back with you next week, a holiday edition of the show. We're going to hand out some gifts to the Broncos front office and Broncos players. Should be a lot of fun as we get into next week's edition of Upon Further Review with B-Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next Monday. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store.